Hello everyone, my name is Colm Sweeney and today we're going to do a little painting of mountains, lakes and a little bog road, and we're going to be putting that together over the next half an hour. Get your paintings out, get your paints out, your blues, your yellows and reds, your brushes, and join in for a little bit of fun with Colm. Thank you. Hello everyone and welcome to Paint with Colm, and today as I say, I'm from Ardra, County Donegal, and we're going to be doing a little landscape. Now we've done one landscape, series one, and we used cerulean blue and yellow and red and three little colours till actually the traffic lights, the blue, the yellow, the red and a little bit of yellow ochre and a little bit of dark brown. So we're going to do another little landscape, following on actually from the same idea as video one, and putting in a nice sky so everyone gets used, and a few mountains and a little lake, and then we hope to get a little bog road into this one. So we'll call this one the bog road, and how to put a little road in, because I know myself that people have trouble doing a little bit of that, putting in roads and stuff. So without a delay, we'll just start with a little bit of, again, the same little thing, a little process, just a little bit of water on your paper. Now you don't have to do this, I emphasize that sometimes people don't do it, but I always say if you put it on, the paint is a little bit livelier, works a little bit freer than putting on dry techniques, which you can do too. There's so many different techniques in art. Learn as many as you can and use as many as you need to do a little painting and to make life maybe easy on you. So a little bit of water in that, and again I cleaned nice new bucket of water, a little bit of ultramarine blue, mix it, and I'll just hold that up so you can see it. So starting up here with a little bit of ultramarine, just up the top and nice soft strokes over and back, dropping them in like this here. Now I'm not a great man for blending skies, I don't believe in blending skies, but if you want, and that's everyone's up to themselves if they want to put in a little blended sky, because some people like doing that, and maybe in one of the little videos I'll show you how to do a little bit of blending. All I'm doing is using a little bit of water at the minute. It's a kind of a watercolour technique, just blending down and sealing the paper so it's nice and soft, just like the last little video, a continuation of the sky, like that. And coming on down, keeping the water, and of course I have nice clean water now to start off with, so coming in here. So I have a little frame that I put around, so I'm kind of coming over to the edge where the little frame touches on. But then skies change so much, so no one can say to you you have a wrong sky. You look out the door and you'll see loads of little skies. Even since we made the last video, their sky has changed again, and that's something you can capture when you're outdoor landscaping or out with your camera. And today everybody has cameras now on their phones, so they really can get working on their photographs, their sky. So I'm just darkening it a little bit here, blending it in like that. Now there's another little trick I'm going to show to you too. When you're putting in, say, a little lake, well, what you do is the same little blue, yep, same blue as you have on, the little bit of blue, and just from one side to the other, and this will be dry, and you just pull it in from the side and see what happened. And this is when we don't put a wetness on the canvas or on the thing, and see how the little shimmer of light, that there gives that lovely little shimmer that runs along the lake, and it's a thing to watch out for. And I remember when we were very young out, we used to go otter fishing, and otter fishing was my dad and them a long time ago. And what we'd do is we'd take a long line with little flies on it, and it would go out onto the lake, little otter board, and you would catch little rainbow trout on it. Illegal today, but you know what, it's not illegal today. And then we'd take them home or take them to the little cottage at the lake. There were a fair little, two men lived there, and they were Hearns was their last name, and they were great for making flies, and that's the little flies that you put on your rods. So I'm just pulling that over, see like that, that's just now putting in our little lake there. And now that could change, see how it's dark there, that's going to change, of course it's going to change as we get into it with our brushes, but what it just has it in as just in our minds to have the little lake there. So we have a little sky put in, and then we have a little lake to start off the day with. The next little thing that we might put in is again, using the same colour, a little bit of ultramarine blue, and we'll go for the little, for anyone that's new painting, just little M's, think like an M, and then that makes life a lot easier. So in the last little video we done a little M, and what we done, we put in a nice soft colour here. So I'm just going to soften that down in a minute with just some white until our horizon. See how the horizon's nice and soft there? It's very important to keep that nice and soft. It'll mean then that your painting looks far away and the mountains are softening them down. And where I come from, there's a range of mountains, the Blue Stacks, so if you ever get time to walk along the Blue Stacks, you'll see this range of beautiful mountain. And I know we're all into walking in a big way now. It's crazy, all the people, but it's good. It was our saviour in lockdown. Get out, get doing a bit of walking. I remember I'd be out after sheep on these hills and you would see only neighbours. You wouldn't see people coming along the road asking you where the walk takes them. That's very important. So you see that nice soft hill there? Yep. Same now, we're just going to darken it a little bit. And the reason that we want to push that hill back a little bit, so we'll just put one up here, using the same coloured theme. If you wanted to change your coloured theme and use a darker blue or a different blue, that's okay. Try it out, see what goes, and that'll all add dividends to your painting career, where you do the experiment. Experiment is the whole thing about painting. I still experiment with colours, with new things, painting on different fabrics and different. So that mountain's gonna, see how it moves the other mountain back a little bit. And I'm just using the one colour. I'm not using any other colour at the minute, just to line in what we have. You could see you're nearly sketching with the one tone to get the painting up and running. I hate to look at when the board is white. Just nice to get it based out in your head what you're doing. So we'll soften all that down. Now if you want to soften that down, so say you didn't have and you didn't soften, a little bit of white. See, I just put a little bit of white on my brush, and I can soften the hills down, and they're running in there. They're far away hills on this little landscape, because today we'll be concentrating on how to put a little road into our landscape, which is of course the old bog road. I'm sure we're doing this here in Castlevlaney and Big Tom, 4 roads of Glen and Maddie. And many a times I listen to it on the radio, and it's lovely to be here doing that today with a man as famous. I actually met him one time when we were at one of the dance halls, and it was actually in a little place, actually Gweedore it was, so it was down in Gweedore in Donegal. He was travelling around Ireland singing his songs, and of course everybody knows the lovely and the voice of Big Tom in the mountains. And sometimes your art takes you back in time, you know, when I was growing up, and people heading away and leaving these lovely beautiful mountains and lakes behind them. It must have been very sad. And then to buy a nice tape of Big Tom's and sit and listen to it, it'll be very sad if you're away. So we have our little sky. Now I'm not finished with our sky, I'm just letting it dry a little bit, and I'm going to go up with a little bit of white and put in a nice big floating cloud going across here, yep. And if we blend her in, I'll just show you what that means, 2 seconds. Sometimes I don't put out acrylics till I really need them, so in a little minute I might put out some white. This is titanium white, lovely strong white, so I just put that little cloud floating along there, coming across the top of the hill. Sometimes you can have them running into the hill, which makes your hill look even further away. Say you wanted to run a little one across like that there. And what you do then is you just take your finger, nice and softly blend the bottom of the cloud. This is when you get your hands into your, and if you get used to this little blend technique and you have to be out on a nice day, it's really handy, because you might forget have your blending brush with you, and you just can blend with your finger. You can do so much with your hands in art. So what I done then is just washed it in the water and then cleaned it, because there's acrylics and it's all clean now again. And the same thing, make sure to wash your brushes. Again, I have the 2 buckets of water. I have the one for the when it comes away from a colour, so I'd have a nice clean brush, and these are just ordinary old brushes that I bought in little tonalities, and they're great for oils, watercolours and acrylics, because of the great solidness and softness at the same time. They're nylon eye brushes that cost a lot of money, and sometimes they don't even use them. It's only they're there, as I say, they come in a collection. Next little colour we're going to do is we're going to put a little bit of distance in here, and again we're back to our nice yellow ochre. For anyone that might only be joining us, that's the colour of yellow ochre. Yellow ochre is an earth colour, so we're hopefully going to be put that in the distance. And as we tipper along this nice formation on our horizon line, we remember that we have our little lake there. Today is a lake. In Series 1 it was the sea coming in, so today it's a reflection of the sky. Most lakes reflect the sky. They're lovely clear soft water in them, and of course them lovely rainbow trout, which was on an evening, if you caught few and if you survived the midges, you could have a lovely tea with them. And sometimes we would, if there wasn't too bad with midges, we'd sit at the lakeside and light a little fire, and my father would cook them and and sit and watch the sun go down. So you need to get into your landscapes, see where your mountains and little stories that happen with them. So we have our sky now put into our little mountain. I might go back and put a little bit of grey in the bottom of that, just so when we're putting shadows into the mountain sometimes it's the reflection. So what I might do is just make that grey colour that I made before, and it's just a little bit of dark brown. Brown and blue, no matter what, makes grey. And this is not yellow, red and blue that I talked about before, it's just a little bit of, and I'll just show you that. And there's your little grey there, little grey colour. So you don't need to put out too many colours. And again, another thing about painting, if you have colours that you like to put out, don't listen to me, put out them colours that you like, because everyone has colours that they like themselves. So I'm just putting a little bit of shadow along there, like that, just on that, and blending it into that part of the cloud. The cloud's still a little bit wet, so I can do that. So that it's actually the shadow comes from the mountains, believe it or not, and it gives you that reflection up into the sky. And of course the sun reflects on the brightness coming down from that. So if that part of the mountain is dark, this is going to be the bright side. If that's dark, and I'll just darken that out just before we go a little bit further. Just a little bit of that mountain's a wee bit darker, and that's because the shadow, the light is coming this direction. I don't go on too much to light at the start because within the teaching of it, that's light there. This is going to be light along the lake, but there's other little ways of adding that into your painting as you go on in your journey. So tap that along like that. This is our course along. There's the shoreline. There's a little things happening there. We can't see them. So you can see how one painting blends into another. My brush and make sure that doesn't run a little bit. If it runs, it'll just be a little shadow running into the lake, so don't make any mistakes, just happy accidents. So we have our mountain, our sky, our mountains. We can soften that mountain down a little bit more if we want to. Just put a little bit of brown there on it, and it starts to look like something's happening there. Things start to happen in painting when you're painting, so if it happens, go with it, don't fight it. Now there's a couple of little inlets that we just will put them in as we move down the paint, because we normally start at the top, and little inlets coming out here, jutting out, and this is kind of coming out into the lake, and there might be a little bit of a pole sticking in them, just one on each side, one further back, like that. Add it like that there. You might anchor your little boat to it, or might be a man standing there fishing or whatever in that part of the lake. There'll be a little shadow of that there, and that's where the lake starts to patter, not too much, and of course we'll leave that there, just starts to balance out. Now today's class was mainly about, when we got the sky as going over little parts, is how would we put a little road into it. Well, I'm going to show you that a little bog road, and of course so many people have asked me about bog roads, because where I live there's loads of little bog roads, because we live in the bog, and the roads lead up into the mountains, and a lot of people go and walk, and I'll be asking, where would that road take you, Colm? It take you into the bogs, that's where it does. And many a day I walked on them roads in the bare feet to work at turf, and we didn't enjoy it too much, I'll tell you that. But anyway, today if I could do it, I would jump at it. So when you're putting in a little road, you make an S, see an S like that, S, just a simple S like that, and then another S like that there, and that's how you put in your little road. If you think, see how you think of letters. Letters are very, very important if you're doing a little bit of painting. So letter S, see? And it's coming like that, and it's fading away in. Then we put another, and this is just using brown to sketch with, and the other road goes right down there, the letter S, and it comes up and turns, and there's your little road, as simple as that, into your little painting. So it fades away down into that little angle. Now, just to take the hard lines out of it, and what I call hard lines, when this dries, it looked like I kind of drew the road in too hard. So I'm just putting, before it dries, just tapping it with a brush, gravel and rock there, and little things happening, coming out onto the road, like that. Same here. This is just taken out, and this will be all covered in, of course, when we get to that part of the painting, it'll change. So that's how you put in a little road, and this whole thing about this little painting is just put that little road in. And of course that little road might have a centre, and the bog roads now, they would have a little bit of grass maybe growing up. So you make another little small S, see? And there's your road, and it gets bigger as you come up towards this part of the road. So there's your little bog road into your painting. And of course when you put it into V, that means it's fading away until the distance, which is very, very important when you're doing this. Some people put it too straight and they have a straight road and they don't know what's wrong. If you think of the letter S, it'll take care of that for you. And if you're driving along in the car, see how many roads turn into a letter S. I do have people and students that work with me, and they'll be out and they'll be driving around and they'll be saying, God, I seen that letter S on the road column today. I've never seen that letter S before. Well, you see, it just goes to the brain that it looks like a letter S. And landscape is very like that. Even portrait painting, you see a lot of different letters in people's faces and spaces and stuff like that. So that's very, very important, just to think of them little things when you're driving along. And as I say, keeping the eyes on the road, not on the letter S. So we have our little road drawn out like we sketched it out, fading away into our lake down at the thing. And then what I normally do then is I put a little undertone. And today on one side I'll use just this lovely lemony yellow, and I'll just put the little undertone here. This is just sealing it now. This will change, and because of acrylic paper, sometimes it's nice to seal it and give it a little bit of a sealer. And it's the same here. I'm just going to put this on as a sealer. This will change all too in a few minutes when we get to that part of the painting. But as it dries, it's like looking through a chapel window. It gets transparent, and it's very important to do it now. It's very important. You don't have to do this. You can do it your way. I mean, remember, once you take this big powerful brush into your hand and open that tube of paint, that's your license to be a painter. You don't have to do anything else as long as you get your paper out and start painting. And I can't say you're right or wrong, because that is not the law of painting. The law is painting. It's taking the colours and seeing what you and just experiment. If you don't experiment, you'll never get there, because Leonardo da Vinci was a great designer, but he was also a great experimenter. He experimented with all the different colours and different shades, and they had to make all their own colours. So that's at times how they would come up with these earthy tones. Very important thing to think that even the great masters were all experimenters. So everyone that lifts a brush, or I say a wand, and create a magic scene, let it be anything at all. It can be of a tree or a mountain. So I'm just putting on this little sealer to seal our little landscape here, and then it adds a little bit of dividends. When you're going over this here, you'll see a whole heap of things happening that if you just bare white paper, that wouldn't happen. Another thing about growing up in the bog is we would have our own turf, and turf is a thing now that people are not even allowed to cut the turf, believe it or not, by machine. It's all, in my day it was all by hand, and you'd spend a long time cutting a few fires in the bog, but it was great fun because you'd have 3 or 4 characters. Now you see how I'm putting a little bit of red bleeding into this? Yep. Well, this is just changing around things a little bit, and it's going to turn to a lovely orange colour, because actually bogland, when you look through it, there's thousands of layers of colour. And I read a very funny thing last night. We were draining our land for years, and now we're being paid now not to drain it, to turn it into a marsh. And one of the reasons for it to turn land into a marsh is to stop the flow of water coming down out onto the roads into the villages and towns and flooding them. So after a long time they've realised that what the farmers done 40 years ago have to go back now. The only difference is they get paid for doing it now, so they have to pay somebody to drain it. So that's one for, as I say, to put into your pipe and smoke it. You'll hear that a lot now about preserving land and keeping land. Now you think I'm crazy now putting some red on, but you'll see what'll happen here with this. This is the magic of colour, when one colour comes against another. Because if we put this little bit of red against that, later on that'll add a little bit of divots to our paint. And I'll just take a little bit more. Well, there's one thing you can't paint without paint, so put plenty on your brush, don't be afraid, and have your little tester there. That's just, as I say, that's just a little bit of a cornflakes box I use. I cut them and I put a little bit of white sealer on, and then I can say test out a colour before I crash until putting it on. And it mixes too for you there on that, so be very careful. As I say, if you're a wee bit worried, only if you're worried about something happening now. And I just see where I put my little card, and just as I go along I take out, and this is just a little bank card, and what I have the two sides cut, and what I'm going to do is pull out some scrubbery here and there before the acrylics dry, and I pull these out again when they do dry, when it put in a darker colour. But you'll see when I get as far as there. This is just scraping out things happening with your, and it learns you how to use your card. Now, as I say, if you hadn't got one, just in case, just take your tube, and the back of your tube, make sure it's level. And when I say level, that is like a little bit of tin there, and you can use it to scrape two out formation. So you don't need to rush out to the shop and buy or use your bank card. Thing down beside us, the banks are nearly all gone, so there'll be a lot of bank cards for you to use. So that's just using the back. And if you hadn't got that and you were lucky enough to have a Bob Ross or a Wonder Knife, you just take them and scrape. So this is, I'm not too worried about this foreground, so I'm practicing here with it. Just scraping out little different bits. Lovely to get one of them. I know they're hard to get today because of the changing over from Brexit. So we have a little bit of orange there, and the next thing I'm just going to put a little wash of colour on a road. So I'm just going to take yellow ochre and I'm going to water it down, and what I'm going to do is just give it a slide of colour here on our road so that we have something to work with. I don't want it white, I want it just melt it down a little bit. Give it that nice tone of the road, just soften a little bit there, because that'll be going into the distance. So we have our little road. So we have our different thing done now. We have our little S put into our road. We have our little lake and our little shimmer on the lake coming across there. Watch out for the shimmer. I used to hear the fishing men used to say the shimmer when the heron would be coming in. You could see the angels, they called it, dancing, and it would be the shimmer on the bay, and they would know then the heron were on their way. So now I'm going to go to, I'll make a little darker colour. Yep, I'm going to take a little bit of blue and a little bit of brown and a little bit of red, and I'm making a very dark tone. See how dark it is? Because I'm going to start here and I'm just going to work down onto our roadway. You can see now how the undertones are all starting to help me out here. As a very, very good one. So then I'll just keep with the cards over it, putting in stones and rocks and stuff here on the roadside. And if you're ever up about bloody Foreland and Donegal and Gidore, you'll see lots of rocks. But up in our place too, in the bog, there are lots of little rocks and stuff, and that's a great little way of passing in a look. So a little bit of red, a little bit of brown, and a little bit of blue, just to make a kind of a strong colour. And the same on the side of the road, just darken it. Now I'll be putting in a few little poles and stuff like that, so of course there are always a few old wire poles that the farmer didn't hammer in right, and I'm leaving the little undertones to shine through, and if I just want to see them a little bit more clearer, all I have to do is just clean the brush a little bit and let them turn until can be anything happening there. This is the wonder of painting. Anything happening in it, nobody can say to you then, well that doesn't or this doesn't. All these things are fools the eye, and that's what really art's about. Is fooling the looker and taking them into your picture and learning them to see nature. So I'm just scraping out rocks and stones there and a little bit of grass and stuff. So I would take a little bit of blue, and once I put a blue over, a little bit of ultimate. I'm just working with the one blue not to confuse people today. I usually use some other blues too, but just to keep it for everyone. And I'm just putting some of the blue over, you can see. I'm watering, and of course it's transparent. Colours start to happen on their own. That's what I think is lovely about acrylics. They dry quick and they allow you to do that. So you can see a lovely little bit of green coming through, and don't kill the bright spots, keep a look at the bright spots because they're very, very important too. Tipping along there. And there's some acrylic painters that wouldn't agree with this, and then there's some acrylic painters would agree, and I've seen so many different acrylic painters talking about years ago, this is not, that's not, this, and you know something, a lot of them have moved in now to more imaginary type of painting, which is the old going. When I say that, is not going with this, what this is supposed to be, and that's, they're going and they're trying out and they're having great fun experimenting. That's the word we're looking for. Just experiment. And this is all these things are happening in the landscape. You just don't see it yet, but the minute you see it, you'll start to say, how do I capture that? Well, you don't have to capture it. All you have to do is tap away and have a little bit of fun while you're doing it. This is just a kind of a little shadow colour that we're putting in to darken off our little road there, and you can see now our road is starting to appear a little bit stronger, like that. And always on the side of the road too, there are a couple of things that I have to put in. I'll have to put them in when I get. So just see, I need to put a little bit more darker here, just at the road fades way into there, like that. And you never know what might happen down in there. You could be walking down and there could be a cottage down that road. There could be an old buyer. Actually, old buyers are worth a lot of money now. You get an old buyer on your land for planting mission. So scraping out, see, I'm taking the knife and scraping out things happening on the roadside. Just sometimes I scrape them in trees, which means 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, not just 1, 1, 2, 3. It gives you things happening. You don't have to be precise with it. It'll start to show up, but that's there anyway. After a while, once you keep darkening it. Now, I have a few big rocks to stick in here, so we're back to our yellow, our blue, and our red. So we have the three colours, yellow, red and blue. Yellow, red, and a big bit of blue. See how we stick to the same formation, and that makes a lovely dark, big dark colour for our painting. So big dark colour here. We're going to have a big dark rock here, darker even than that, maybe more blue. If you want to go to the dark side of it, you always add more blue. And our big rocks are coming out onto the roadside here, like that. Now I have to be careful when I put them in that I scrape them out the minute I do this if I want to get them in this way. So I scrape out a big rock, see, if I put two into it, and another big rock. So you can see it's so simple, and all the colours of the rocks will be in and that, and I can lighten that down. There they come out onto the side of the road, and of course over here. Another reason for this too, I always like to keep this part of the painting that little bit darker, because it creates distance into the painting for anyone that is talking about putting a little bit of distance. See the big rocks is there? Yep, there they are. And there are a couple other different ways I'll show you as we go along to put in rocks. There are actually as many different ways of doing it, but I always like this way because you're using your undertones as well to do the big rocks. Scrape them in with your, like that there. And you don't have to, you can make them round like that, or you can just make with the lights tapping along on them, like that. And maybe here and there, there's a branch or two, can be anything, a fairy tree or whatever you come upon. And that's a funny thing when I say fairy tree, because there's so many, out in the bog there's so many little old trees, and a lot of people think that they're blackthorn and whitethorn trees, and they're known to be fairy trees. So you could see a little boy and ask for a pot of gold maybe if you came on him. And my grandfather, great grandfather's time, he was a great man for telling the stories So we have our sky, our blue sky, and what I might do is just when I'm up at the sky, is just darken it that little bit. And what that does then is just throws the mountains. Remember what we said in the first video, throws the mountains back and just blend a little bit. It doesn't have to be a lot of it. Just when you put your little frame on, it looks like that it faded away. So we're putting in a few little stones. Now we're going to darken that in a little bit by using a little bit of ultramarine, a little bit of dark brown, just to make a dark colour, and a little bit of red to add a little bit of redness to it. And we'll just put in a few stones here, darken them down. And the reason for doing this here too is just to see the undertones come through, and maybe then I'll show you a few seconds. So say you wanted to make a rock with a little bit of dark on one side and a little bit of white on the other side. You can actually do a little rock. I'll just do one or two there, like that there, and you just tap them in. That's just having white on one side of your brush and the dark colour on the opposite side, and you can put in a few little bits like that. Now I'm just again dropping out some white. I only put out the white and the colours as I need them, because with acrylics, if the phone happens to ring and you happen to have to leave, your colours will go hard. So just put out what you need when you need it, and it just keeps your colours from actually putting out a whole heap of colour that you don't. So that's a little bit of white on one side and your dark colour, just to recap. And all you do then is just here and there tapping a little where the light is hitting the stone. Simple as that there. Lovely little technique over the coloured rocks, and then what happens is you look through them and you see a whole heap of things happening. Now as we come near the end of this little video, I'm just going to put in a few little poles, and before I just tap in a little bit of poles, I'm just going to take some of that blue and make a nice grey again, and these are transparent, so I just want to cross the road here with a little bit of, see how that looks dark? Well, that's a shadow. This is the shadow colours now, and it's going across the road here. I'll just show you what this means in a second, like that, and maybe there's a little bit of a shadow across the road there, and that's very important to put into your paintings. It's a little bit of shadow. It starts then to show there's things happening, and of course it's transparent, it'll fade away and dry as if it's a shadow crossing the road and up onto the other side where the little grasses and stuff, and I just maybe tap in a few little grasses and thing there, a little bit of yellow and blue, and just tap them here and there, so there's a little bit of grass growing on the roadside. See it there going right down, see like that there, fading away. Just we tap that in and it'll just draw along the thing there. Now there's a little bit here and there, and if you take the back of your nail and you want to scratch that out, you scratch out little green things that's happening, like in the middle of the road there might be rushes and stuff, and keep your nice shadow colour in. So we said in this one we put in maybe a few nice poles. So the way you put in poles is all your dark colours that's left over from your painting, and you take a little bit of maybe yellow ochre, again a little bit of blue. See how many times I go back into the blue, because the blue is a great colour. And along here I'm going to tap in just little poles, grow out of there, a wee bit bigger maybe as we get closer, and the big ones here going that way. And this is just an old fence leaning across the road there. We'll darken it in a little bit, and maybe there's, now what you can do then with your knife, it's just nice and easy. If you want to put a little bit of wire on that, just do it this way here, tap it on. You don't want to see too much of the wire, because of course the wire will be like that there, coming along, scraping it in with the knife. This wire's tossed a little bit, so maybe the farmer didn't get time to get out and see to this part of the road. So you have an old fence coming up there with a little bit, and away down into the distance you have your fence, and I can see another little bit of the fence here, or I need a little bit more paint. As I said, we can't paint without paint. So I'm just going to dry off my brush and just put in some of the, tighten the shadow there like that. And I want to just darken that shadow a little bit more as we come to the end of this video. Just down here I'm darkening it, might be a shadow here. Remember what I said about shadows and how it, well, if you just start off by learning them to put them in like this here, you'll then end up with the shadow colour coming across. And maybe there's little taps coming across the road of stones and stuff. You can put in with your finger rocks and stuff happening there too as well. So when you come near the end of this painting here, the next little maybe series of this painting would be maybe adding a little cottage to it. I don't know, we'll see when we get there. I'm going to, just before we finish, one little last thing, and I'm going to back up to our sky, and I just see that I would like to put in a little floater, finish off that little floater, remember when we said, and that's all we have to do. You can go back, make sure your finger's clean for blending, and just blend in little clouds floating along the mountainside. So you see how you can go back to the sky and put it in, and maybe just a little bit more. So as I say, thank you again for joining this little class and working with us on this little series of the bog road. And there we had the first landscape with the sea. This is a bog road and leading down, and we might see what happens there. There might come a little, you never know, a little cottage or a barn, whatever. When you're out walking you see these things happening. I'll just spread that nicely, because there are one or two little boys we have to put in, and we just put them in here, our little seagulls. They've come in land of the day and they're flying over our little landscape. We just tap them in, and that's just putting the brush that way. Now just maybe there's a little bit of light hitting our pole, so if you want to put it in you can along the way here, and that's just light hitting it from the way the light would be coming across the landscape. The last little thing I always like to do is stick a little frame around it, and all of a sudden it makes it look that little bit. And thanks everyone again for painting with us. Remember, you won't do this without taking the paints out. Take out your colours, your buckets, your brushes, and get painting and have fun. Thank you everyone.